Welcome to the video. So I just thought I'd come on and talk about this current situation with the negotiations over Iran. I just keep this short because by the time anyone sees this, the situation may have resolved itself one way or another, and this will be pointless. So let me just try and get this out quickly. So what is the situation? Well, yesterday Trump put out a tweet on Truth Social saying that they were close to an agreement with Iran to basically end the conflict, and just saying that a few things needed to be finalised and it'll be out soon. And his Secretary of State Rubio said that the agreement may well be published today. But today Trump told us that his negotiators, that he told us that he told his negotiators not to rush it, and that the agreement will be a while yet. Okay, so let me just start by saying I think that's a load of bollocks. Right, the idea that he's telling them to go slow now after having just announced yesterday that it'll be out quickly is nonsense. He's also threatened Iran again, so obviously something isn't going right, and I want to talk about what that is. Of course I don't know for sure, but I'm as sure as I can be that there isn't an agreement on key issues yet, and Trump thought that what might on the face of it look like smaller issues could be ironed out, but it turns out that they're not smaller issues after all. They're actually very important issues. And I just note in passing that this is this is yet more evidence of what I would call bargaining in this video. That is Trump sort of bargaining with himself, trying to convince himself that he's on the right track. We just about solved it. Oh, no, we haven't. Oh, yes, we have. Oh, no, maybe we're going to go back to war with them, right? It's all of this bargaining that I talked about in that video before. Anyway, we don't know exactly what they're negotiating about, but there seem to me to be a few things worth talking about now. So let's just start with some reasons for being hopeful. And now, by hopeful, I mean if you want there to be an agreement. I realise there are some people out there who want the war to start again, but I'm not one of them. I'd like there to be an agreement, and I think that there are reasons for being hopeful. And the main reason for this is the focus that the Trump administration is placing on nuclear weapons. They're saying the key thing is that Iran cannot have nuclear weapons, and they're prepared to make an agreement as long as it's clear that Iran will not be able to have nuclear weapons. Now, that's a very positive sign, I think, because the Iranians will agree to that. They don't want nuclear weapons. They've made it clear for at least a couple of decades now, well, let's just say a decade and a half, that they don't want nuclear weapons. And that they don't want nuclear weapons for some quite practical reasons, actually. It is partly because there is a religious issue there, but there's also the problem of escalation of nuclear proliferation in the region that they don't want. So one of the reasons they don't want nuclear weapons is because if they know that if they get it, Saudi Arabia will get a nuclear weapon, that Saudi Arabia has been promised one by Pakistan. That was part of the deal that led to Pakistan getting nuclear weapons in the first place. And the Iranians would prefer things to stay as they are rather than to have a nuclear-armed Saudi Arabia. It's also quite likely that Turkey would get nuclear weapons and so on. And Iran would like not to go down that route. So I think they're quite happy not to have nuclear weapons. But that does raise the question then, why did they get into the business of enriching uranium, right, if they don't want nuclear weapons? And the answer is, well, there's two answers. One is they actually have perfectly legitimate reasons for some enrichment. Enriched uranium is used in industry and in medicine, but they are enriching beyond that level to the 60% that everyone's talking about. That's beyond that level, and that's not weapons grade, but it's closer to weapons grade than they need. Why are they doing that? Well, they want leverage. Well, leverage over what? Well, their position is that they were betrayed in the JCPOA. The story in the JCPOA was they were supposed to, they would sign up to the JCPOA, they would permit inspections and so forth of their facilities, they would agree to limiting their enrichment, and in return they would get sanctions relief, and they never got that sanctions relief. And so their position is, we'll develop enriched uranium as leverage to get the sanctions relief. And there's a lot of talk in the US about the possibility of the Iranians getting sanctions relief and also the unfreezing of their assets. So their position, the Iranians' position would be, well, okay, we made this stuff in order to get leverage. Well, if we're going to get what we wanted, then we don't need the enriched uranium anymore. We can give it up. This also helps to relieve tension over the Strait of Hormuz. Trump said that the agreement will mean that the Strait of Hormuz is open. Now, open is an ambiguous term. The claim has been that there'll be no toll, though it depends what you mean by toll. There's now lots of talk that there will be not a toll, but an environmental fee levied on ships coming in and out of the Persian Gulf. And there's actually some environmental justification for that. There's so many tankers going in and out of the Gulf that there is environmental damage being caused, but the expectation is that the fee will be well in excess of what's required for environmental purposes. So there may actually be a toll, but it will just be called an environmental fee or something like that. That's possible. But it's even possible that there will be no toll, and no toll at all, not even a toll that's pretending to be something else. And the reason for that is, although a toll would have been very advantageous for Iran would have earned billions of dollars that way, it's actually much more important for them to get sanctions relief and the unfreezing of their assets. There are billions of dollars in unfreezed assets in various banks and so forth, like places around the world. So they might well be prepared to give up the toll if they can get sanctions relief and the unfreezing of those assets, because the sanctions relief and the unfreezing of the assets are just worth much, much more to them than a toll on the Strait of Hormuz would be. There's also been no mention in any of the sort of speculation or the sort of informed scuttlebutt about this of any decisions about US bases in the region. That was an original Iranian demand that the US bases would have to be demolished, and then the United States would have to leave the region. And I think the reason that there hasn't been any discussion about this is not because the Iranians are prepared to waive their concern there, but because the whole issue has become moot. The US bases have been so badly damaged. There's lots of information that's come out about this. You can find that on YouTube in the last week or so. Not that it was really in any doubt about it to start with, but anyway, there seems to have been an admission now by the US that those bases have been very severely damaged, and also that they can't defend them. So what's the point of having undefendable bases, right? The bases are going to close regardless of any agreement, because there's no point having a military base that you can't defend, and the United States can't defend those bases. There's also been, although this has been kept a little bit more under wraps, it seems as if there's been quite a lot of pushback towards the United States from particularly Saudi Arabia and Qatar. One of the reasons, the suggestion is that Trump has decided not to restart the conflict is because the Saudi Arabians and the Qataris, or Qataris, whatever they're called, Qataris, have told the United States that they are not able to use Saudi Arabia and Qatari airspace. So in other words, what's happening is that nations in the region are pulling back from their alliance with the United States. So if that's happening anyway, it doesn't need to be in the agreement. There's also been no mention of Iranian ballistic missiles. At various times, the United States has insisted that the Iranian ballistic missile program, so we're not talking about nuclear weapons now, we're talking about conventional weapons. The United States has insisted that the Iranian ballistic missile program be abandoned, but there's no talk about that. There's no way that the Iranians would ever give that up. And that also relates to the nuclear enrichment issue as well. I think the Iranians feel pretty comfortable with their conventional forces. They feel that it's a major deterrent that they have, and that allowed them to achieve things that, I don't know whether they believed it or not, but certainly the rest of the world did not believe that they would be able to achieve, but they have done so on the basis of their conventional weapons. So they don't need a nuclear deterrent. So maybe even hardliners in Iran are prepared to compromise on this. So that's all positive if you want a deal. So why then the delay? Well, of course, I don't know for sure, but here are my two guesses. The first possibility, and this is what I think is most likely, though I could easily be wrong, is that the problem is timing basically that is the timing of the implementation of the agreement. And as I think it may well have been that Trump got to the position was, okay, we've got agreements on all these things. It's just the timing now. No worries, I can go ahead and announce that the agreement is close. But it turns out the timing is a much more problematic issue than he thought. Basically because, for very good reasons, that Iran does not trust the US. I mean, after all, they have been attacked twice during negotiations, and you've got to say it could easily happen again this time. So they want the US to perform at least some of its side of the deal before Iran, gives anything away. This is not such an issue with the Strait of Hormuz because the Iranians can simply open the Strait of Hormuz knowing that they can close it whenever they want. Okay, so they might agree to open it, but then if their position will be if the US doesn't keep its side of the agreement, they'll just close the Strait of Hormuz again. I mean, they did during the so-called ceasefire. They did fully open the Strait of Hormuz for like an hour or something, whatever it was, before they closed it again to the extent that it is closed, because of course it's not completely closed. So with respect to the Strait of Hormuz, the timing is probably not the issue, but it is much more of an issue with the enriched uranium. There's talk about the idea that the 60% enriched uranium that the Iranians have will leave the country. It will leave Iran. But the question is when, right? The Iranians they're going to want some evidence that the United States will keep its agreement before they allow that uranium to go. So that's very difficult, right? That's going to be a very difficult issue to negotiate. The US will want exactly the opposite, right? They will not want to agree to sanctions relief or the unfreezing of the assets until the uranium is gone. That's going to be quite a difficult issue to resolve, and it may not be resolvable because there's so little trust between either side. So and it may well be, as I say, that the US does not intend to keep its side of the bargain. Now, I mean, the Iranians will feel that, but I'm saying that as well. That's what the recent historical record suggests. I mean, if you're prepared to attack people during a negotiation, why would you not be prepared to negotiate with them and then just not keep your side of the bargain? So I think, the Iranians have good reason for being skeptical. They have good reason to want a show of good faith from the United States. But the problem is that any show of good faith in the United States will be interpreted by Trump's hawkish enemies in the United States as weakness. And he doesn't want to show weakness, right? He's not that kind of guy. So this may be an impasse that can't be overcome. So that's the first, that's my guess as to what's going on. There's a timing problem, and it's proving very difficult. But there is another possibility, and it's a real possibility, and that is that this whole thing is a lie anyway, that these negotiations are just not supposed to work. And what we're seeing here is a repeat of the negotiations involving Vance and the vice president in Pakistan in April, where Vance was ostensibly sent there to negotiate with the Iranians, but he was sent there with an impossible task. There's no way that was going to work. And it may well be that that's what's happening here as well. And one of the reasons it didn't work in April is because the pressure to continue the conflict really came on from Israel and from the Israel lobby in the United States. And there's absolutely no doubt that is happening at the moment. I understand that I think this hasn't been confirmed yet, that Netanyahu is on his way to the United States, or at least is planning to visit the United States in the very near future. And the reason for that is because Israel absolutely does not want any agreement to be made with Iran, because any agreement will leave Iran in a position of dominance in the region, and that is just intolerable for Israel. So it may well be that either this was never supposed to work, or as I think more likely it was supposed to work, but now Trump is changing his mind again because of pressure that's coming from Israel and the Israel lobby in the United States. Which is it? Which is the problem? Is it timing? Is it that it's not supposed to work? I don't know. So as a result, I don't know what will happen. I have no idea what will happen, but maybe we'll know in the next few days. Anyway, thanks for watching.